going to quote Tom Bauer, by saying, he said, look, we all laughed at Samantha and she was right. And everything she said has come true.
How can you get your age so wrong?
People out there have been speculating on that Meghan Markle has lied about her age. Is she actually older?
Oh no, what a shame. What a shame. Here I was preparing a special episode of the show to mark Meghan Markle's 45th birthday. I've got Link Lauren, one of Meghan Markle's biggest supporters in the United States of America, and we were just going to celebrate how this lady has turned 45. And Link, it's just such bad news because all of a sudden, this birthday, this 45th birthday, has turned into an absolute disaster for Meghan Markle.
She just turned 45. That's the number on the birthday cake. That's the number written in the caption. That's also the age newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic reported without a second thought. But just a few hours later, thousands of people in the comments were doing what they seem to do every August, counting backwards and somehow coming up with a completely different answer.
There's nothing original here.
I hope you're having the best birthday you've ever had. Thank you for everything.
Which is really such a fake.
I've read those comments for years, and this time something stood out that I had never really noticed before. Almost everyone is asking the wrong person. The questions always focus on the father. People say, he would know. He was there. A father knows when his daughter was born. Others bring up the half-sister, old classmates, yearbooks, or that magazine page from 1997 that gets pulled out every single year like it's some huge discovery. But here's the strange part. After years of books, documentaries, court records, and even a very expensive Netflix series, almost nobody has asked the one person who wouldn't need a document, a photo, or an old article to answer the question.
What if Meghan Markle was adopted? What if there more to her birth than just her age? Could it be that she doesn't know her own age because she's been lied to by her father and mother? Could it be that's why Doria doesn't have a bond with Meghan Markle? Because what mother leaves her daughter when she's 3 or 4 years?
Her mother. Doria Ragland wasn't waiting outside or standing down the hallway. She was in the delivery room on the 4th of August 1981 at West Park Hospital in Canoga Park, in California's San Fernando Valley. Whatever anyone else in this story may remember, she experienced that moment herself. She was the one giving birth, and through all these years, hardly anyone has ever simply asked her about the date. Yesterday, 45 candles sat on that birthday cake, and behind that moment is a mother whose voice is rarely part of this conversation. So that's where the focus is today. There's no need for arguments, and there's no reason to wave around paperwork or tell anyone what to think. We're simply looking at the one perspective that often gets overlooked. We're going to look at what her own family has already put into writing, their books, legal filings, and even private emails that later became public. When I lined all of those up side by side, I noticed something I honestly didn't expect.
Is a copy of 17 magazine, and it was published in March of 1997. In it, it mentions our Megzy from Los Angeles and that she was 21 years old at the time of publication. That would make her birth year at around 1976.
There are so many different numbers floating around this family that it's easy to lose track. And years before Harry ever spoke publicly, Meghan herself made a comment about age that's on the record, yet almost nobody quotes it the right way. We'll get to that because it takes on a very different meaning once you've seen everything else. So first, let's look at who people have actually questioned. The list is much longer than most people realise, and surprisingly, neither parent is on it. People checked former classmates. They compared a childhood friend's birth year. They searched a California state index. Others dug through company records in London. Someone even pulled out an old magazine from a 1997 archive. It seems like everyone went searching through paperwork, records, and old publications. But after years of digging, I couldn't find a single example of anyone simply sitting down with either parent and asking them directly about the birth year. Not the father, not the mother. And there's an order to all of this that rarely gets mentioned. A father remembers a date from memory.
What wondering, why does her age matter at all? Because her age would also have an impact on her ability to have children. Because if Meghan Markle is 4 years older than what we have been led to believe, it makes it even more difficult to believe that she was able to get pregnant so quickly.
Which may be accurate, but it's still a memory. A half-sister works it out based on what she remembers and the timeline she experienced. A mother remembers the day she gave birth herself. Those aren't the same kinds of sources! One comes from first-hand experience, while the others depend on remembering or piecing events together afterward. One comment really stood out under a previous video about this topic. It said, "Don't understand. Her family lived a life around her. They must know her age. Why are they not telling? Her dad must know when she came into the world." Dozens of people agreed with that comment. But looking back, it seems many of us, including me at the time, were focused on everyone except the one person who was unquestionably there from the very beginning. And here's where things get even more interesting. Doria Ragland has never been someone who avoids speaking in public altogether. In December 2022, she gave her first public interview. She opened with a simple but powerful statement. The last 5 years had been challenging, and she was ready to have her voice heard. She spoke about the phone call when her daughter told her, "Mommy, I'm going out with Prince Harry." She also talked about race, regret, being followed by the media, and feeling unsafe. Yet through all of those conversations, nobody stopped to ask a basic question about the timeline.
Absolutely clear that this young woman was strong in her beliefs. It didn't matter if she was 11 years old. She believed in women. She believed in her own power, and she wasn't afraid to reach out and say, "I want my power. I want my right."
Nobody asked, what year was that? Or any other question about the dates being debated. Whether that question should have been asked is open to opinion, but it's notable that the discussion never went there. Things become even more interesting when you compare the dates and numbers that different family members have put into writing over the years. Let's start with Samantha's book, which she has described as her effort to set the record straight about her sister. In it, she writes about Meghan's birth with a line comparing it to the Great Migration of genes, bringing the ship Meghan Flower to their family. She then gives a birth date of the 31st of August, 1981. Now, the year matches the widely reported birth year, and that's worth acknowledging. But the day is different. The birthday celebrated yesterday was August 4, while Samantha's book lists August 31. That's a difference of 27 days in a book presented as an effort to correct the public record. Then there's Samantha's legal complaint. In that filing, she describes there being a 17-year age difference between the two sisters. That number is often repeated whenever people discuss this topic. However, Samantha was born in November 1964. Counting from November 1964 to August 1981 comes to roughly 16 years and 8 months, which is close to 17, but not exactly 17. Whether that's simply rounding for convenience or something else is up to the reader, but it's another example of how the numbers don't always appear with complete precision. Then there's Meghan's own writing. In a private 2018 email that was later disclosed during court proceedings, she described her father's other children as being 15 and 17 years old when her parents separated. That adds another set of ages to the timeline, giving people yet another figure to compare with everything else already on the table. Except there's another detail that catches attention. Samantha, who was born in 1964, is the older sibling. Her brother was born in 1966. Yet in that private email, the older sister is listed with the younger age, while the younger brother is given the older one. Even the fact-checkers who reviewed these records pointed it out themselves.
I recall seeing this photo was from an article that came out back on November 11, 2017, before Harry and Meghan got engaged. And that is a super important detail. This article that was published on November 11, 2017 with the headline, "The Look That Hooked Meghan's Dad."
Their conclusion was that the ages were clearly slightly confused. Those were their own words. So let's add everything up. There's a book that lists a different birth date. There's a legal filing that rounds an age difference instead of stating the exact figure. There's a private email where the sibling ages don't match the family timeline. Then there's a fact check that acknowledges those inconsistencies while still concluding that the broader claim being reviewed was false. Whether someone finds that convincing or not, it's understandable why people notice the conflicting details. At the same time, it's important to separate those inconsistencies from official records. A birth certificate and state records are official documents, and they exist for anyone to examine. They say what they say, but many of the personal accounts from people closest to the family contain small differences that have fueled years of debate. Looking only at those personal recollections, you find a different birth date, an approximate age gap, and sibling ages that don't line up perfectly with the calendar. That naturally leaves people asking which source deserves the most weight. Now, here's the part that really made me stop and think. For years, one theory has continued to appear in discussions about this topic, no matter how many official records are mentioned. Some people claim she wasn't born in 1981 at all. Instead, they suggest dates like 1976 or 1977. Those ideas are often linked to an old magazine page, comments from former classmates, and people comparing photographs while arguing that the timeline doesn't seem to fit. Rather than dismissing those claims outright, it's worth asking a simple question. Does the family timeline support them? That's where things become important. According to Meghan's own published account, her parents first met in the late 1970s. Her father was working as a lighting director on a television production, while her mother was working temporary jobs at the same studio. Reports describing their relationship say they had a whirlwind romance that lasted about 6 months before getting married.
The charming high school photos of the woman who could be Prince Harry's mother-in-law showing the sweet eyes and afro that Ms. Markle thinks made her father fall for her. Written by Caroline Graham. Yes, the same Caroline Graham who was responsible for publishing those staged photos that ruined Thomas Markle's relationship with his alleged daughter.
Their wedding date is well documented, the 23rd of December, 1979. The ceremony took place at a temple on Sunset Boulevard, with a monk officiating. She was 23 years old, and he was 35. Years later, one family member even told a newspaper that relatives hadn't heard about Thomas until the wedding invitations unexpectedly arrived. Whatever conclusions people draw from all of this, those reported events form the timeline that has been publicly described by the family themselves. Now put the two timelines side by side. According to the widely reported timeline, Meghan's parents met sometime in 1979, married that December, and their daughter was born in August 1981, about 19 months after the wedding. Everything follows in a clear, straightforward order. The alternative theory that has circulated for years tells a very different story. Some people claim the birth happened in 1976 or 1977 instead. If that were true, the timeline wouldn't just shift by a few months. It would place the birth before her parents are publicly reported to have met. Not before the wedding, before the introduction itself, before they were even said to be working together. That's far more than a simple date mix-up. It's important to be clear about what this means. This isn't about telling anyone what to believe, nor is it about declaring one side completely right or completely wrong. It's simply about following each version of events to its logical conclusion. If someone accepts the earlier birth year theory, then it doesn't just change a birthday, it changes the entire family timeline. Because if the birth really happened in 1977, then the familiar story about meeting in 1979, a whirlwind 6-month romance, the December wedding, and a child arriving 19 months later couldn't all fit together in the same sequence. At least one part of that timeline would have to be different. That's why the discussion keeps returning to the same question about the people who experienced those events firsthand. And that brings the focus back once again to Doria Ragland. According to publicly available records, she was born on the 2nd of September 1956 in Cleveland, Ohio.
This is the 1972 yearbook. And there you can see that there is Doria. Now, from what I gather, Fairfax High School in their yearbooks only have pictures of sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And in this photo, Doria is a sophomore, which is 10th grade. So that would mean, logically, she would have graduated in 1974.
That would have made her 24 years old on the 4th of August, 1981, turning 25 just 29 days later. If those dates are correct, she would have been a young mother welcoming her first child not long after marrying. For many people, memories surrounding the birth of a first child are incredibly vivid. Parents often remember not only their age, but also the time of day, the weather, the hospital, and countless small details from that moment. That's why conversations like this continue to attract attention. People naturally wonder how personal memories, public accounts, and official records all fit together, especially when different sources appear to describe the timeline in different ways. So here's where everything stands. There's one person who would naturally remember those events from first-hand experience. And over the past 8 years, while this family has remained one of the most discussed in the world, she has given just one major public interview. In that interview, she said she was ready to have her voice heard. She had plenty of time to speak, a worldwide audience, and cameras rolling. Yet throughout that conversation, and despite years of public debate surrounding her daughter's age, she never directly addressed that specific question. That may not mean anything at all. Parents are not usually expected to publicly confirm details that are already part of official records. Still, this topic has been discussed for years in books, court cases, newspaper articles, and countless online conversations.
If you had the option, P. Diner, to interview Meghan Markle, what would be the 3 things that you would like to ask?
I would ask her, girl, did you give birth to those children?
The debate became so widespread that long-established publications examined it as well. Even with all that attention, the person many people point to as the closest first-hand witness has never publicly commented on the issue in a direct way. People often argue that everyone involved has their own perspective or personal interests. The father has shared his account, the half-sister has shared hers. Commentators, writers, and online creators all present their own interpretations. That's simply the nature of public discussion. Doria Ragland, however, has largely stayed out of those debates. She hasn't published a book about the controversy or made public appearances centered on these claims. Because of that, some people see her as an important voice that has rarely been part of the conversation, while others are satisfied relying on the official records already available. And that brings us to another topic that sparked just as much discussion, the birth story of Meghan and Harry's first child. Many people will remember the details that circulated publicly. Candles in the hospital room, Sanskrit chanting playing in the background, a photograph of Princess Diana nearby, references to epidurals, and reports that the couple left the central London hospital only a short time after the birth.
Harry in his book says that within 2 hours of the child being born, they were back at Frogmore Cottage. Those are his words. Those are not my words. Those are his.
Those details quickly became the focus of endless online debate. One comment summed up the skepticism some people expressed. She gave birth in hospital at age 42-43 after 2 epidurals and was home in her bed 2 hours later. Really? That remark received a great deal of agreement from other readers. Another person replied, "You can't get 2 epidurals. Sorry." Others questioned different parts of the story altogether. One comment that stood out asked, "Do hospitals even allow patients to have lighted candles in their rooms?" That simple question became another example of how people began examining every reported detail and comparing it with their own experiences or understanding of hospital procedures, leading to even more public discussion around the story. Seems like a fire hazard to me. That's a fair question. According to Harry's account, the candles weren't real flames, they were battery operated. But that leads to another question people have joked about for years. Who thinks to pack battery-powered candles for a hospital delivery room? For some readers, that's one of the more unusual details that stands out. Here's something that's easy to overlook. Nearly every widely repeated detail about that day, the candles, the chanting, the epidurals, the timing, and the trip home, comes from one primary source: Harry's own memoir. That's his version of events, written from his perspective. Like any memoir, it's a personal account rather than an independent record, and readers naturally decide for themselves how much weight to give it. It's also worth remembering that personal recollections aren't always perfectly consistent. Earlier, we looked at examples where different family accounts appeared to contain small errors or conflicting details. That's one reason some people hesitate to rely on any single personal narrative by itself, whether it's in an interview, an email, or a published book. A memoir can provide valuable insight into someone's experiences, but it remains one person's recollection. To be clear, this discussion is not about the children in any way. They didn't choose the attention surrounding their family, and they shouldn't be drawn into public speculation. The focus here is only on the stories and timelines presented publicly by the adults, and on how different versions sometimes appear to emphasize different details or leave people with additional questions. That brings us back to a broader point. There have been public discussions surrounding two separate birth stories, both supported by official documentation, but also surrounded by years of public commentary and debate. Alongside those official records are books, interviews, legal filings, emails, and media reports that people continue to compare with one another. Whether those differences are simple mistakes, misunderstandings, or something else is a matter of interpretation, but they're the reason the conversation keeps resurfacing. So where does everything stand after the 45th birthday? Much the same as it has for years. There are official records that present one timeline. There are personal accounts that sometimes differ on specific details. There are old magazine articles, books, legal filings, and private emails that continue to be examined by people interested in the story. All of those pieces have fueled ongoing discussion, and many observers remain convinced by one interpretation, while others accept the official record. I'm not here to tell anyone what they must believe. Even other well-known stories from Meghan's early life, such as the widely reported account involving a dish soap advertisement, have been examined and debated by biographers and major publications over the years. That doesn't automatically prove or disprove anything. It simply shows that public stories can continue to be questioned long after they first become widely accepted. And at the beginning, I promised there was one detail worth coming back to. So, let's get to that now. Back in 2015, years before Harry entered the picture, Meghan Markle was promoting a legal drama when she was asked about her age during an interview. Her response is often mentioned, but one part of it is frequently left out. She said, "I think as women actors, the industry can assume they have a shelf life. I'm always told, don't say your age. I'm 33, and I'm really comfortable with that. If anyone has a problem, then it's their problem, not mine." Read those words carefully. The quote contains two different ideas. First, she describes what she sees as an industry expectation. She says actresses are often told not to reveal their age because of concerns about how they're viewed professionally. Then, just moments later, she openly states her own age and says she's completely comfortable sharing it. That's why the quote attracts attention. On one hand, she explains that there can be pressure within the entertainment industry to keep personal details like age private. On the other, she publicly shares her age anyway. Rather than being a contradiction, some people see it as acknowledging the pressure while choosing not to follow it. Others interpret it differently. The quote leaves room for more than one reading. By that point, she'd already spent years working in the entertainment business, so her comments reflected her own experience in that industry. More than just giving a number, she was describing the environment she believed many actresses faced. Whether people agree with that perspective or not, those remarks continue to be part of the wider discussion because they explain how she viewed the subject of age long before many of the later public debates began. One woman, one question, one answer that many people feel has never been asked directly. Doria Ragland has spoken publicly before and has said she was ready to have her voice heard. That's why some people believe an obvious question has been missing from the conversation all along. For years, so much attention has been placed on everyone else, while very little has focused on her perspective. That's where this discussion ends today. Now it's your turn. Drop your verdict in the comments. Do you think her silence is simply a mother choosing to protect her daughter's privacy, or do you believe there's another reason this question has rarely been addressed publicly? I genuinely like to hear what you think because your comments often bring up details and viewpoints that others miss. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. It really helps more people discover the channel and join the conversation. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications because there are plenty more stories and deep dives coming soon. Finally, if you've ever come across a verified interview or public clip where Doria Ragland directly discusses this topic, share the source in the comments below. It's always worth looking at primary sources, and if new information comes to light, it'll make for an interesting discussion in a future video.